Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Daylilies are beautiful, but every few years they get crowded and need to be divided. Also, there are many herbicides on the market. We're going to talk generally about the different kinds. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Joellen Diamond. Joellen is Director of Landscape at the University of Memphis, and Mr. D will be joining me later. Hi, Joellen, what are we about to do today?
We are going to divide a daylily today.
Okay.
And can you believe this is the landscape that we planted 5 years ago?
It's been 5 years.
It's been
How about
5
that?
years. And you know, it was a really poor site. It holds a lot of water. And this particular daylily, a lot of daylilies can stand both dry and wet conditions.
Good.
And this is a wet condition, and this happens to be the Stella d'Oro daylily. It's a smaller daylily. And it has grown, and this one has gotten large enough that we want to divide it. So we're going to do that today, and the techniques that we're going to show you today are the same for any perennials that you want to divide.
Okay. Okay.
You can use these same techniques wherever you do. And this is spring, and we've decided to divide it in the spring. Spring is a good time to divide.
All right.
Also, late fall. Fall is a good time to divide perennials.
All right.
But spring is another good time, and that's why we're doing that now.
All
And what I'm gonna give you this shovel,
I'll take that.
and we've got this nice mulch here. I'm gonna take my digging fork and I'm going to scrape away the mulch so we can try to save it and put it back.
Okay.
We've got earthworms already.
Oh, we sure do. That's good. So as you're doing that, Joellen, what do you think about the performance of the other plants that we have in this area? Since it's been 5 years.
It's been 5 years. You know, everything is doing well, and even the canna is doing excellent.
Yeah, they look good.
The one plant that supposedly liked a wet, soil area that has not done well, in fact, they've all disappeared, even after we replanted them, were the plumbagos.
Plumbago, that's right. I remember that.
That's the only thing this is
do remember
missing, but it did not like this condition. I guess it was just too wet for it.
All right. But daylilies did.
Daylilies did great. Now what you're going to do is we're going to stay away from it just a bit, but get close enough.
Okay.
And you're going to
Let's get close enough.
dig down.
All right.
And go all the way around the plant.
All right. And there may be some tree roots here from this sweet
Oh,
bay.
you know what? That's true. A little bit further in, next to the plant.
All right. So what do you think?
Yeah. There we go.
All right.
See if it will come up out of the ground.
There it goes.
There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
There, it came up out of the ground. And you notice that we didn't get 100% of all the roots. We got
But look at those roots, though.
We got a good amount of them.
Sure did.
This front part here, there's not too many, a lot of dirt. So we'll get rid of that. And there's a root of the magnolia.
Yeah.
We don't need that. Now you can do several things with this. We have a lot of roots here, and so we've got a lot of starts. Every time you see one of these stalks coming up out of the ground, we could divide it enough that each one of these we could plant somewhere. But we don't want to disturb the root system that much.
Okay.
And we only want it to be in half. So we're going to divide it in half today. Could divide it more. And I like to use a digging fork for this because you disturb the roots less.
Got it.
You could use a shovel.
Sure.
Shovel is okay, but you'll cut more roots that way. The digging fork
Makes sense.
takes less roots with it. And I like to kind of help myself by figuring out where half is for this plant. Then I like
Looks
to
like
put
half.
this down.
Okay. Ah. Is it coming apart? Yeah, there it goes.
And then they come apart.
Yeah, there it goes.
And we
That's good.
disturbed a lot less roots that way.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't get all of them. I mean, this one, we cut that one. One out of the whole thing. I think we did really good.
Great job by you. How
I
about
think
that?
we did really good. So what we'll do is we'll plant half of this back in this hole, and
Okay.
then we'll transplant this somewhere else. Now, you could divide it again if you wanted to, but
Sure.
we don't want to make them that small because we're trying to mimic what's already planted here. So this is where this came from. Make sure you get the soil levels correct.
All right. Well, don't want it too deep, right?
Don't want it too deep.
You got it? Okay.
You put your soil back in it. Make sure we get it all buried in.
That's good.
And that looks good.
Looks good.
It's where it was. So now we'll take the
The
mulch
mulch.
and put it back around the plant. And there we go.
Look at that.
It's been transplanted.
Wow. Like nobody's ever been there.
Like no one's been there. Yes, that's exactly how it should
There it
be.
goes.
And now we have another one to plant somewhere else.
Okay.
And there is a bare spot over in front of that spirea.
All right.
So I think we will plant it there. Again, we have this nice mulch. So we want to make sure we move the mulch out of the way.
Okay.
There. And since I have the digging fork, ooh,
Oh,
see
is
about
it hard?
roots,
Ah, it's the tree roots
tree roots,
from the sweet bay. And worms.
and worms, which is good.
Oh, yeah.
Nice roots in here.
Yeah.
I don't
Get
know.
out
You're
there.
gonna have to see if you can dig a hole big enough to plant this. You probably can get through the tree roots with that shovel. Yeah, just put the
Yeah.
dirt right over here.
Okay. There you
Yeah,
go.
you'll just cut the roots. We can either cut them with the shovel if they're
There it
small
goes.
enough, or we can get the pruners out and
There
cut
it
them.
is.
We'll get our transplant
There it goes.
and make
There it is.
sure it is deep enough for it. Only have a few inches here. Want to make sure we have it same level as the soil.
Ah, yeah.
So since we do, then we will
I think that works.
fill the dirt in around it. All right, I think we've covered up all the roots.
Yeah, looks good.
And we need to put our mulch back over this area. And again, it looks like we were never here,
Never.
which is the way I like things to look.
Okay.
Now, we could have just, instead of using the pruning fork, because a lot of times people don't have the digging forks,
Okay.
so you could have just cut that in half with the shovel. Again, you probably would have, disturbed more of the plants and cut some of them off, but that would have been okay, because there's plenty here.
Yeah.
But either way, it works. And now we have a whole new plant in a whole other place.
Now we know how to divide daylilies. How about that?
Daylilies?
And some of our other perennials, right?
And a lot of the other, same
deal.
principle.
Same principle applies. Good deal.
Mhm.
Thank you much.
You're welcome. We were going to prune this shrub because it's a little tall, we realized that the reason why there are so many branches here is because we had cut this branch several years ago, so we broke what we call the apical dominance of that particular stem. The apical dominance of this original stem was inhibiting the others around it to not grow as vigorously. So what happens when you cut the apical dominance, other branches break and try to become that apical dominant branch. And it looks like this one here has one because it's taller than all of the others. But that's what happens when you cut branches and you take away the apical dominance. That's how you can fill in a shrub, by cutting that. And look, we got 5 stems from one cut that was just a single stem before.
All right, Mr. D, we talk a lot about herbicides, so let's give the folks herbicide basics, and some terms are involved as well.
That's right. And let's just start out by saying, you know, all herbicides are pesticides, but not all pesticides are herbicides.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Okay. You know, all Volkswagens are cars, but not all cars are Volkswagens, right?
We got
so, so herbicide is anything that'll kill a plant. And there are several different herbicides out there. We have pre-emergent herbicides that will actually prevent a weed from coming up, or when it comes up, it'll kill it in the process of it germinating and coming up. And then there are post-emergent herbicides, and those are the herbicides that you apply to weeds or to plants to kill that are already up and growing. A couple of examples of pre-emergent herbicides would be pyropendimethalin or Trefilan, or they're examples of pre-emergent herbicides that you put out there early, usually earlier in the year. And some of the pre-emergent herbicides for lawns you'll put out in the fall to take care of the winter weeds and things like that. Post-emergent herbicides are the ones that, you know, you got weeds growing out there and you go out there and you try to kill them. Glyphosate, Roundup is an example of a post-emergent herbicide. Cefoxidim is another. And there are a lot of, there are probably more post-emergent herbicides out there than there are pre-emergent herbicides. It's good to use both of them to get the best results. If you use a combination of pre and post-emergent herbicides, you'll probably do a better job. There are contact herbicides that kill a plant when you spray it on there. Gramoxone is an example of a contact herbicide that you know, you can cover half of a leaf and spray half of it with Gramoxone, and that half of the leaf that you spray will die and the other half that you cover will not. Then there are systemic herbicides, and these are herbicides that are taken up by the green tissue of the plant and translocates throughout the plant and will kill the entire plant. Glyphosate is an example of a systemic herbicide. Trade names are Roundup is a trade name, Post is a trade name, and the active ingredient of Roundup is glyphosate, and the active ingredient of Post is cefoxidim. And many times there are a lot of different trade names for one active ingredient. I mean, glyphosate, there are probably hundreds of products out there now that have glyphosate in them. Same thing with cefoxidim. There are a lot of different trade names. Advantage is another example of a trade name of cefoxidim. Roundup is even, it's a Monsanto product, but now there's a Roundup that doesn't have glyphosate in it.
Yeah.
So
for lawns,
so you've got to be careful. You've got to read the label. It's very important with any of the herbicides, you read the label. There are different categories of toxicity with herbicides, and some of them are pretty toxic to humans if you ingest them. Some of them are toxic if you ingest them, and they're not toxic dermally. Some of them are toxic dermally. You get them on your skin and it can hurt you. Again, the label will explain that. Let me give you an idea of the difference in the toxicity levels of some of the herbicides here. Here we are. There are only a couple of highly toxic herbicides that are out there on the market, and I'm not sure that they are still on the market. Baypam was a soil, I'm trying to think the term. It was a soil sterilant or for nematodes that you put in the ground to basically control nematodes. And I'm not sure Vapam is still on the market.
Yeah, I didn't heard of it.
The active ingredient is metham.
Oh, wow.
Sodium arsenate is another one that we used to use to control insects in cotton. And I don't think that's on. I don't think that's on the market anymore.
No.
But those are highly toxic herbicides, and highly toxic herbicides on the label will have the signal word. There are signal words that very briefly describe how toxic a herbicide is, and other pesticides also. But danger/poison with skull and crossbones, that is the most toxic of the herbicide. If you see that, you know, lock it away somewhere. And you probably can't buy it as a homeowner unless you have a restricted use permit.
Right.
Or
It would mostly just be the issue of people happening upon
If you
something
happen
that was
upon something,
still
right.
in an old building or something, and that's where they'd need to be careful.
if you see a skull and crossbones, you just kind of stay away from it. It's probably not a pirate ship.
No.
There are moderately toxic herbicides, and the signal word for that is warning.
Okay.
And the difference between highly toxic and moderately toxic is the lethal dose of a highly toxic herbicide, or LD50, is a lethal dose required to kill 50% of the animals in the population. It's probably mostly rats.
Right.
We don't check it with humans. Highly toxic is less than 50 and will kill half of the rats in the population. You know, if you got 50 rats out there, it should kill 25 of those rats.
Okay.
Moderately toxic herbicides, it's 50 to 500.
Okay.
And examples of things that you and I are around every day that have that level of toxicity are caffeine.
Yeah.
You know, if you have that much caffeine, gasoline,
Yes.
kerosene.
Right. Know those.
Some herbicides are Avenge, Aquathol. Some aquatic herbicides carry that much toxicity, which to mammalian toxicity. But mammalian toxicity is different from fish and organisms. So some of the things are more toxic to us than they are to aquatic organisms. Slightly toxic herbicides, and there are a lot more of those than there are of the highly toxics. The LD50 for them is 500 to 5,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And the signal word on the label will just be caution, so be careful. Probable lethal dose for a 150-pound person is 1 ounce to 1 pint or 1 pound. If you ingest it.
Right.
So, I mean, I try to avoid eating
Right,
herbicides, you know, most of the time.
Right.
Infrequent.
But aspirin is something that carries that same lethal dose designation. Table salt carries that same lethal designation. But herbicides, Abasagran, Command, 2,4-D, 2,4-DB, Cethoxidem, Host, you know, I mentioned that.
Right.
Dicamba carries that same level of toxicity. Vinegar is another something on our tables that carries that same. It's acetic
Which often
acid.
comes up when we talk about what are some potentially organic herbicides.
Right.
And
And
we
vinegar
need
is
to
the
keep in
first
mind.
thing that
That's acetic.
comes up.
Acetic acid. It's
Right.
Yeah, acetic acid.
So yeah. Then almost non-toxic herbicides, they carry LD50 of greater than 5,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. Lethal dose of almost non-toxic herbicide for a 150-pound person is more than 1 pint or 1 pound. That's a pretty full meal.
That's a lot, man.
Roundup, glyphosate, Touchdown, Rodeo, or a couple other products have glyphosate in them. Arsenal, Chopper, Scepter, Pursuit. You know, there's this page, Treflan, Princep. So most of the herbicides that you can buy on the shelf fit within the almost non-toxic. You know, most of them are in that category.
Right,
Things
because
that you
most
buy
of
on the
those are going
shelf.
to contain 2,4-D, you know, for the most part, or dicamba.
Right,
You know,
right.
which would be your post-emerge herbicides.
But one thing I want to mention, in this last list that I listed, they were almost non-toxic. I kind of scanned over that, and I saw 2 herbicides in there that are restricted use pesticides. But it's not because of their mammalian toxicity, it's because that they will very easily go off site.
Right.
If it get rain right after you put it out, it can
Non-target
kill
effects.
desirable plants.
Right.
But A lot of different herbicides out there. Just read the label.
Read
That's
the
the take-home point. Read and follow the label.
Thank you, Mr. D. It's good stuff. Read and follow the label, folks. Appreciate that, Mr. D.
This shrub has gotten a little tall, so we're going to cut it back just a little bit. And this is a little tall here. Yeah, well, I just want to bring it back down to a manageable size so that when it's not as tall as the lower branches of this tree that it's next to, we're going to cut some of these down because they're a little tall. I'm going to be cutting this back to a point of growth, which could be a bud that's going to break above this leaf. And since this leaf is pointing this way and we want to fill in this area, we're going to cut just above, about 1/4 inch above this bud that's going to break in the direction that this leaf is growing. So that way it will fill in the plant in this area. So now this Fleur de Nice looks a little more in control and the size that we need to be under these trees.
All right, Joellen, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
I'm ready.
Good questions we have here.
Yes.
All right, let's get to the first via email. I've had a problem with invasive double daylilies. They show up in my daylily beds and with an orange root go under a neighboring daylily, crowding it out. I found I had lost a prized daylily before I knew it. How do I control these unwanted daylilies? And this is Lillian in Knoxville. So, the old invasive double daylilies. How do you
Yes.
get rid of that?
I feel her pain. I have had the same problem. They look double and they're beautiful. You think, oh, this will be nice. And then all of a sudden it just takes over. The one thing that is good about them, they usually have larger foliage and they're bigger plant, and there's less of them, like there'll only be a single one. Whereas most of the other daylilies are more clump forming.
Right.
So hopefully you can tell the difference between, when they're young and just coming up in the growing season, and then you can dig and get rid of the double daylilies. If not, you might have to dig the whole clump up and separate them, and you'll probably still be able to tell the difference between the two. Because I'm sure that the actual daylilies that she likes are more clump forming and have a different size foliage than the other.
So ID is real important here.
ID is very important.
Wow. Okay. And once
But
you get
that's what I did. I
That's
dug
what-
it up. I just kept digging it up and digging it up. You could put some kind of, glyphosate on it if you wanted to, but
Right.
I just kept digging it up.
Okay. And it
Eventually
rid of
got
it?
rid of them.
okay. Do they
But it took a while.
They have an extensive root system?
Well, they keep running.
It
They
just runs?
tend to run.
Okay.
So they don't they clump in big, huge running areas.
Okay.
So, but the other dailies tend to stay more concentrated in one
Gotcha.
small area. So they're easier to identify and to keep the others out.
All right, Ms. Lillian. Yeah, so identification is going to be key, and just dig them out.
Dig 'em
yeah,
out.
don't worry about using anything else. Just dig them out.
I just found it
persistent.
easier to
Yeah.
dig them up.
Okay.
Get rid of the root system.
Get rid of the root system. All right. So you got a little work ahead of you, all right?
Yeah.
Let's get rid of the root system. All right, here's our next via email. This grass comes up every spring. We pull it up and it comes back and spreads. We need to know what it is and how to get rid of it. And this is Charles from Somerville, Tennessee. Good old Somerville,
Yeah.
right? All right, Mr. Charles, guess what? Jolie knows what that is. What is that?
It's called Poa annua.
Annual bluegrass.
Annual
is another
bluegrass.
name,
Oh,
right?
my goodness.
And you had a story about that, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, when I grew up in Illinois, we didn't have a whole lot of it in our bluegrass yard.
Right.
But when it did come up, we didn't like the seed heads, and of course, a teenager, what do you have to do? Because there was no internet back then.
Right.
Dating myself. Anyway, I would sit outside as a teenager, and I would just pull them up by hand. The problem is I didn't understand that they have lots of seeds. And
Lots
I
of seeds
mean,
on those seed heads.
they are
Yeah.
actually considered one of the most difficult weeds
Exactly right.
for lawn care companies to control.
It is a winter annual
Here.
grassy weed here.
Yes.
Right. Grows in clumps.
Yeah.
With all of the moisture that we've been having here lately, Mr. Charles, they're easy to dig up.
Yeah,
right?
they are.
But when you dig them up, I would have a bag ready.
Yeah.
Right. So the seeds, right? You
Yeah.
can capture the seeds in the bag, because if not, it'll come back in the fall,
Yeah.
right, when you get lower soil temperatures.
Yes.
Right. difficult to control.
Very difficult to control.
Pre-emerges, put them down according to the label, right? You're gonna have to do that, you know, early fall. Dimension, you know, something that contains diethyl, which is the active ingredient. But post-emergent herbicides,
It almost never,
it's not many.
not many that work.
It's not going to be many. So you're going to have to either spot spray with something that contains glyphosate, or Image has some activity on poor annua. We didn't follow the label on that. But here, culturally, let's go to that, right? So here's the thing about poor annua. It likes areas that are poorly drained and compact soils.
Yes.
So what does that tell you? Soil aeration,
Yes.
you know, would help out. Fertilize according to the soil test. Make sure you're mowing at the right height, because it's going to grow where there's space,
Right.
right? And that should help you out.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But it
But
is difficult.
there's a lot of
difficult.
seeds in the ground, so that's why pre-emergence would really help
Yeah.
to control it.
But that's going to be a, you know, it's going to be a cycle.
It is.
It's going to be
take a
cycle.
while.
It's going to take a while, Mr. Charles. But at present time, the moist, you know, grounds,
Yes.
they're easy to come up. Right?
They are.
You know, just make sure you capture those
I used
seeds.
to have fun digging them up. I mean, just pulling them up.
Look at
They
that.
pulled easy.
Mr. Charles, hey, Joel might be for hire. Who knows? She might come over and do that for you. All right. So thank you for that question, Mr. Charles. All right, Joel, that was fun.
It was.
Thank you much. Thank you. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. For more information about daylilies or herbicides, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have other videos on these topics and links to tons of other useful information. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.